Happy Friday. It's Conservative Cat, and I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day, Monday through Friday. It's a daily show, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Time. Today, we've got so much to dig into, so I am just going to jump right in, if that's okay with you. I hope you have a fantastic weekend planned. I am going to a wedding this weekend. I am so excited about that. So let me know what your weekend plans are in the comments section. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Share this out with a friend, tell them to subscribe, get the word out about Conservative Cat, and head on over to patriotpumpenergy.com. Buy your bottle of premium pre-workout today, promo code Conservative Cat at checkout for $10 off. It's the best promo code out there. So let's dig into it today, shall we? DC is quietly settling this lawsuit. Now, this lawsuit was launched by a former police sergeant, and she sued over falsified crime stats. We talked a little bit about this yesterday because in Chicago, they do the same thing. Essentially, the medical examiner has like 323 bodies on the slab, and the cause of death is pending. People say, oh, it's down by 30%. Homicides are down by 30%. Although, theft, violence, violent assaults, things like that, all that's up. But the homicides are down. But are they really? Because there's a bunch of bodies that are on the slabs, and their cause of death is pending. So there were 240 year-to-date murders in Chicago in 2025. That's according to Wire Points. We're going to get to, I promise, the corn dogs, the cowbells, and calling out corruption, the Illinois GOP at the state fair. Dave Pabloonshine was there yesterday. He's going to join me in the 7 o'clock hour to talk a little bit about that. I'm excited because there's more and more whispers that Ted Dabrowski, founder of WirePoints, president of WirePoints, that he is a possible gubernatorial pick. And that is somebody I can get behind. He's intelligent, and he knows more about Illinois' financial situation than I think anybody in the state. So we definitely need somebody in there who understands the gravity of the pension debt. And I think Ted Dabrowski understands that. I hope that he makes the official announcement that he's going to be running for governor. Governor J.B. Pritzker. Now, a lot of people have been blaming CEJA, which, yes, it is to blame for the high electric bills. There was a viral electric bill that went around and was shared. It was Hacienda in Pekin, Illinois, Hacienda Mexican restaurant. And they were sharing their electric bill, and it was like $5,000 for the month of July, which is absolute insanity. That's unsustainable. There's no way a place that sells margaritas and tacos is going to be able to keep up with a $5,000 a month electric bill. There's no way that they're going to be able to do that. But a lot of people are pointing to CEJA, which is the Climate Equitable Jobs Act, the transitioning of natural gas, of coal. We've transitioned from reliable energy sources to not so reliable, I'll put it nicely, wind and solar. A lot of people have been blaming that, which, yes, that is to blame. But people are sleeping on this, the Shutoff law that was signed into law like just a few years ago. And this is really shocking to me. I didn't realize it was this bad until I did some digging. You can't shut off somebody's power or utilities if it's above 90 degrees, which, I mean, today it's going to be above, all week it's been above 90 degrees here in the state of Illinois. Pretty much almost all summer it's been above 90 degrees or pretty damn close. Okay. And you can't shut it off if it's below 32. Okay. So I don't know about you, but that's pretty much like 8 months out of the year here in the state of Illinois. If you live here, you know that. So that's not sustainable either. That's the word today, unsustainable. It's just not sustainable. The killing of Illinois' power future, the killing of our grid, you're destroying it by transitioning us to unreliable power sources, yes, but also these laws that you signed into law just a few years ago, it makes it completely unsustainable. Like, who's going to be paying for the electric of all those people who are delinquent on their bills or not paying their bills? If they don't pay their bills, you can't shut it off if it's above 90 degrees or below 32 degrees. And in the state of Illinois, pretty much all winter, like I'd say January, February, that's like several months where if you have somebody who's not paying their bills, you're never shutting their power off for like 8 months out of the year if they're not paying their bills. All right, so we're going to get to that, but first, I do want to get to President Donald Trump's announcement of federalizing the D.C. police, the Metropolitan Police there in Washington, D.C. Yet another heinous, violent incident took place. This is what prompted President Donald Trump to federalize the D.C. police. And now, let's not forget, D.C. is under federal jurisdiction. He's been chatting about possibly doing this in Chicago, L.A., New York City. And the way he would do that, I would imagine, would be through the Insurrection Act, which allows him to deploy the National Guard and federal resources to these areas, okay, to Chicago, LA. Now, DC is under federal jurisdiction, so this is totally within his right, within his jurisdiction, his purview as president. So this was prompted by, the violent incident that took place sometime in early August, where this Doge staffer, known as Big Balls on the internet, love it. He's just a young kid, and his name was Edward Corstein. Okay, so he was trying to fend off carjackers. Now, from what I hear, it was a mob of teenagers, and I think it was his girlfriend who he like pushed into the car and saved. But he was trying to fend off these carjackers, and he was brutally, savagely beaten. So that is what prompted Donald Trump to federalize the Metropolitan Police Department. Okay, so the corrupt mainstream media, you know them, and the crime-loving progressive Democrats, they immediately took to the microphone and found every camera that they could and expressed their outrage over Trump's move here, his big boy move. And they started claiming that he's a tyrant, that he's a fascist, and he can't do this under the limitations of, I forget what act they were citing. There's an act out there that limits the president's ability to deploy the National Guard domestically for domestic issues. There is an act out there, but they started like claiming that he's a fascist. Like I said, this is federal jurisdiction, totally within his purview and his powers as president. Okay, so they started saying that he's a fascist, he can't do this. But then they moved the goalpost, and then they said, well, crime isn't actually all that bad in the district. Crime isn't actually all that bad in D.C. You have Chuck Schumer out there, the Senate Minority Leader, the Democrat from New York, and his posse. They're all trying to get you to believe that they walk around, and they watch the sunrise every morning and drink their coffee, and they walk around the Capitol at night, which is just a flat out lie. If they do walk around the Capitol, which I doubt they do, Chuck Schumer is ancient and his bones are brittle. I doubt that he even walks anywhere. First of all, I'm sorry. He's like ancient, just like Dick Durbin. A lot of these people are like in their 80s. There really needs to be term limits anyway. Chuck Schumer, he's sitting there and he's like, oh, I walk around and watch the sunrise in the morning. It's just such a beautiful day to walk around DC. Okay. Well, maybe for you, man, because you have an entire protection detail with you 24/7. You don't even go to the bathroom without an armed guy like standing outside the stall. So of course you feel safe. Anyway, so they want you to believe that you can walk around DC at night and come home in one piece. Okay. I doubt that a lot of people believe that. Like, if you were to tell people to go do that in Washington, D.C., like, oh, it's totally safe, go out at night and go walk around, people would say, no, I don't want to. I choose life. So, of course, as it seems to be the case often these days, the progressives, they have this narrative that quickly falls apart. Okay, so they have a narrative out there that Trump's a fascist and that he can't do this and he's a tyrant and he's abusing the powers of the president. That was their first narrative. That quickly fell apart because DC's under federal jurisdiction. Anybody with a brain cell knows that this is totally within the powers of the president's, within the powers of the president. And that narrative quickly fell apart. And now this narrative is quickly falling apart that, oh, crime isn't actually all that bad in Washington, D.C. So get this. There's a report out there now And here's what I mean by it falling apart. Journalists are pretty much out there at this point admitting that they get mugged and that they're scared to walk around DC, okay? But we also have this DC police commander who was recently suspended for falsifying data to improve the city's crime statistics, okay? Whew, but it gets worse, okay? So we had a DC police commander suspended because they were manipulating the data, the crime statistic data, which Chicago is kind of known for. So we have a little taste of that here in Illinois. We know what this looks like. They were falsifying data in DC to improve the city's crime statistics, but it gets so much worse because, get this, the Washington Free Beacon reported that the district had just settled a lawsuit that described even more fibbing about the crime stats. Okay, so not only was a police commander recently suspended for falsifying the data, but there was a big old fat lawsuit about the fibbing of the data. So DC has quietly settled this lawsuit. The District of Columbia has quietly settled this lawsuit from a sergeant. So the lawsuit was launched by a sergeant who accused the police department leaders of misclassifying offenses to deflate the district's crime statistics, court records obtained by Washington Free Beacon show. So police brass repeatedly told officers to downgrade theft cases, knife attacks, and violent assaults to lesser offenses, according to internal MPD emails, depositions, phone calls, transcripts that were all reviewed by the Free Beacon. A DC police sergeant exposed her superiors for misclassifying their crimes to make the stats look low. The crime stats look low. They were misclassifying crimes like theft. They probably downgraded the theft. I don't even know what you would downgrade that to, like maybe trespassing or something like that. They were just downgrading a lot of these crimes. And they finally settled this lawsuit because she launched a lawsuit against them. Her accusations were very serious, yet very believable, considering what we know is happening and that has been happening versus what they tell us is happening, okay? They say that crime's down by 30%, okay, in Washington, D.C., but anybody with half a brain cell wouldn't want to go out in Washington, D.C. at night and take a nightly stroll, okay? They realize, I probably won't come home in one piece if I go do that, okay? So her accusations here, the sergeant, her name is Charlotte Dessous. She, in 2020, revealed that commanders, at least since 2018, had ordered officers to downgrade thefts and violent felonies to kind of bolster their crime data, make it look better than what it actually is. So I believe her because, let's face it, it tracks with what has been going on. And if you live in a major American city, you know exactly what this accusation looks like and what we're talking about here this morning. So former MPD Sergeant Charlotte sued the department in 2020, alleging the police leadership punished her for speaking out against the scheme. Charlotte, who joined the force after serving honorably in Iraq, accused MPD brass of attempting to distort crime statistics by downgrading the number of felonies to misdemeanors. Wow. So that there would be fewer felonies in the statistics. So they were all instructed, these officers, to downgrade the felonies to misdemeanors. She also provided records showing that police leaders explicitly instructed their subordinates to underclassify certain instances of theft to keep them out of the crime stats the city reports to the public. So they were being very deceptive here. They did not want to be honest with the public. I want to share this with you. This is a tweet, and this shows you all the victims. You know, these are 45 victims. Janine Perillo, I think I'm saying that, Judge Janine. She shared this out on her X account, and these are all the victims who have been shot in 2025. Okay, shot and killed And they're all 19 and under. Okay. Look at the 45 victims, all under 19, all killed by gunfire in the last 18 months in DC. Tell me that crime is down and that we don't need an emergency focus on crimes and violence in the DC area. So let's take a look at this. Look at their faces. This is so sad. Here we go. These are all the people who have been killed in the DC area last 18 months, all 19 and under, 45 victims. Clearly, there's an emergency happening here. Statistics are obviously extremely useful, and they're a useful tool in a variety of applications. And statistics are very important, but when they're manipulated and corrupted to try to convince people or distort reality or convince people of a distorted reality that is at odds of what you're witnessing on a daily basis, they become really a method of political warfare. They're a method to warp the political debate, and really this is just weaponizing manipulated statistics for one side versus the other in the political debate. Okay, and this is really sad because I love statistics. I think that they serve a huge purpose when they're correct. And they are an extremely useful tool. And it's sad that you've got top leaders in a police station, by the way. So this is why I'm always very hesitant to say back the blue, because I don't want to like back the blue, just blanket like statement back the blue, because there are top leaders in this police department who directed their officers to manipulate the crime statistics into, underclassify or misclassify crimes. So Donald Trump is well aware of this and is taking the crime seriously, something that Democrats have neglected to do for decades, as we've watched amazing cities just decline into these dystopian, something you can't even recognize. Okay, some of these cities, it's truly disturbing, and the people are starting to catch on. And no amount of falsifying the data or reporting on the false data is going to change that reality. All right, folks, smash that like button, share this with your friends. Good morning, John. That's my brother right there. He's listening. And Jay, yes, we are going to be debriefing Republican Day. Lots of things happening at Illinois Republican Day. Now, I will say, at least the GOP is putting on a nice face, and they're saying like, oh, we are not going to give up. So that's something you have to look forward to. I do want to talk about the state fair. Gather around, folks. Gather around the barn, because we are going to be talking about the state fair today. It's in season. I'm sure you can smell the fried food in the air. The politicians are shaking hands of people they'll forget probably within the first 5 minutes. And they're delivering speeches, and you can hear the distant roar of the tilt-a-whirl. But this year, the Republican tent had something that, I mean, from what I could see, a little bit of a spine. At least they're like putting on the facade that they're not giving up. And to me, it's like, I have all the reason to at this point. Like, really, we need to, as a Republican Party, and I don't like getting into politics, like this kind of politics, because I'm really about the news and delivering you news that matters to your life. And this stuff does matter. I'm not saying that it doesn't. But I really don't like Illinois politics, and I don't like the Illinois GOP. And I've gone to these multiple years in a row, these state fairs, the Republican days at the state fairs. And I will say, from the clips that I've watched, Republicans in Illinois sound like they're going on the offense. They stood in front of, the butter cow, the corn dogs, and they had a microphone in their hand, but they told the truth about what's going on with the Democrat Party and what the Democrats have done to our state. And they didn't sugarcoat it like they usually do. Sometimes they, speak about, well, we need to reach across the aisle. We need to work with our colleagues. This is typically the way Illinois Republicans talk. Now, the House Minority Leader, Tony McComey, She didn't mince words. I do want to play this clip here. And she said that the Illinois Democrats are importing crazy policies from California and New York. And believe me, folks, she's not exaggerating. Quite literally, I've seen policies where Illinois just copy pastes what California is doing. So she's not exaggerating. You've got high taxes. You've got abortion on demand, this woke social engineering. I mean, you slap it all in a deep dish pizza and you serve it up under the shadow of the Springfield Dome. This is all stuff that is just going on. You've got open borders, illegal immigration, talks of illegal immigrants getting health care, and that is the summary of Illinois 2025. So McComey, she called Illinois and illegal immigration the capital of the Midwest. So let's take a listen to this here.
Importing crazy policies from California and New York. Democrats have driven out jobs. They have raised your taxes year after year. And Democrats have turned Illinois into the abortion and illegal immigration capital of the Midwest and close to being in the nation. But there is good news. Illinois is waking up. We are awake. President Trump got more votes than any Republican in 20 years. He gained ground even in Chicago. Where's my Chicago red people here today? Let's hear it. Awesome. And why? Why did that happen? Because working families want safety. They want affordability. And they want leaders who work for them and not for a woke agenda.
We're going to need a candidate that can rally a big base of support, carry a message up, statewide against Governor Pritzker to talk about, the lack of opportunity in Illinois, the disinvestment in Illinois, the wayward economic policies of J.B. Pritzker. As he's looking to run nationally and leaning further and further left and more progressive, he is not putting Illinoisans first. And we need a candidate with a strong voice that is going to hold him accountable on that as we build statewide for great success in 2026.
I've been dealing with these people. I know how it works. I know how politics work out here. I think I can do a lot better than most other candidates because I think everyone's done with dealing with just politicians.
We should be a top 5 state in the country for growth, for opportunity, for education. We're a bottom 5 state. We should be a top 5 state. We need to flip all the policies around. People are hurting and people are forced to leave. That's why we're losing people. We should be winning people.
Okay. So I'm going to break this down. I mean, this is really so hard for me because the Illinois GOP is very, very broken and has been for a long time. And, McComey, she called Illinois the abortion and illegal immigration capital of the Midwest. That's not a political zinger. It is backed by reality. Planned Parenthood has practically turned the state into their Midwestern headquarters and into their headquarters. And illegal immigration, thanks to Governor J.B. Pritzker, sanctuary policies aren't just for Chicago. Okay, sanctuary policies, your tax dollars are going to immigrant health care, immigrant legal services, illegal immigrant through nonprofit organizations. They're providing them bus tickets and transportations and things like that. And we're backing that with our tax dollars. And she's right. Illinois working families are awake. We have been for quite some time. We're awake to the fact that our grocery bills have doubled. We're awake to the fact that our kids are being indoctrinated and that they have to undergo mental health screenings as early as 3rd grade, which is just ridiculous. And they're going to suggest a treatment plan of Zoloft probably at the age of 3rd grade, which is just ridiculous, and our property taxes, they're through the roof. We have the highest property taxes in the nation. And our governor is daydreaming, about the White House and about his national profile, and your neighborhoods are crumbling. So she's right. Working families are awake. But here's the thing. we are so broken as an Illinois GOP. Like, I really think our congressional districts at this point, like the 3 Republican congressional districts that we have, are in jeopardy. Okay. Our very small minority, Republican minority in the state house, is in jeopardy. Macomb, she dropped a truth bomb that President Donald Trump, which I'm shocked that she mentioned President Donald Trump. Macomb is not somebody I agree with politically. Not somebody that is a through and through conservative, not super conservative or right leaning, I would say. But she did mention Donald Trump, which I thought was shocking. She said that Donald Trump got more votes in Illinois than any other Republican in 20 years. So I hope that the Illinois GOP, the way that it sounds, right, but it could just be all lip service. It sounds like they are throwing their eggs into the basket of MAGA, Make America Great Again, America First policy. Think about that. In the middle of the media's anti-Trump hysteria, Illinois voters, even in these deep blue states, even in deep blue Chicago, they're looking at their bank accounts, their schools, their streets, and they're thinking to themselves, maybe this is a guy who can keep my gas under $3 a gallon. And maybe he can make my life affordable. And they casted their ballots that way. I mean, 43% of the electorate, a little over 43% of the electorate, was Republican this last go around. So Illinois isn't hopelessly blue. And I think that the media wants you to believe that. And I'm glad that the GOP message was that, hey, Illinois isn't hopelessly blue. We still have to fight. Regular people just want safety. They want affordability, and they want their leaders to work for them, not for woke donors, not for these, approved companies, your quantum computing, your electric vehicle companies. Like, obviously, Governor J.B. Pritzker is working for them, your CCP-backed companies. The working people want leaders who work for them, and folks, I don't think we need a weatherman to tell us what way the wind is blowing here. The wind is obviously blowing in Illinois towards MAGA, towards America First, towards Illinois First. And I don't think we need a weatherman to tell us which way the wind is blowing, unless you're in Springfield, where apparently all the weather reports are coming out of Governor Gavin Newsom's office, because it seems like everything they do in Springfield is just copy-paste from California. It's like a race to the bottom. And, state minority leader there, John Curran, you heard him in that clip. He was talking about Illinois needing a Republican candidate, and how Illinois needs to, every Illinois Republican needs to tattoo their foreheads. We need a candidate with a strong voice to hold Governor J.B. Pritzker accountable. And he's right. We do need a strong statewide candidate. I've been saying that for a couple of weeks now, that I don't think that there's a strong candidate in the race right now. Somebody who could easily defeat Pritzker. I thought that Darren LaHood was going to enter the race, and I was like, okay, that would be a strong candidate. He did not enter the race. Outside of that, I don't know. I would say Ted Dabrowski is a strong candidate. Well known, not exactly, but definitely can hold Pritzker accountable. And here's the deal. Governor J.B. Pritzker, he isn't governing Illinois. He's auditioning for the DNC 2028 presidential nomination, which I told you he's not going to get because he's too ambitious. Okay, they want an idiot in there, a useful idiot. Most likely it's going to be Pete Buttigieg, if I had to guess. They want like a Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris or an AOC or a Jasmine Crockett. They're not going to put Pritzker in there. Okay, so, I mean, I don't know why he is abandoning Illinois, and not that he was for us anyway and supporting Illinois anyway, but he's completely checked out. He's not governing Illinois. He is just full on, how can I raise my national profile? This is why he's, leaning harder left. He's like a teenager trying to impress the cool kids at the socialist book club. Okay. It's so evident that he's just desperately trying to fit in, and they are not going to pick him. So John Kearney talked about the lack of opportunity here in the state, the disinvestment, the wayward economic policies of Governor J.B. Pritzker. Yeah, it's the picking winners and losers. He invests in certain companies like Goshen, the electric vehicle battery maker. There's all kinds of tax credits for them, or Rivian, because they're an electric vehicle battery maker. And he's picking really what I think are losers, clearly, because the electric vehicle market sucks. Nobody wants one, right? There is no demand for them. And he's picking all of these losers, in my opinions, but he's choosing them and he's deciding that they're winners, and everybody else, too bad, Translation, the governor has run this state like a spoiled little kid who runs a lemonade stand, and he's selling at a loss. He's giving away free product to his friends, and then he's asking mom and dad, you and I, aka the taxpayers, to bail him out. And this happens all the time. So we're going to talk about how it relates to energy as well, because I think that a bailout is in the future here, because the energy companies, ComEd, Ameren, they're not your friends. Most likely this is all, and I know this sounds conspiratorial, but it's all planned. It's all by design. Let's shift towards wind and solar. Let's place these impossible mandates on these electric companies like ComEd and Ameren, and then eventually they're going to have to beg us for a taxpayer bailout. And really what this is gearing up towards is government energy. Who provides the energy? It's actually the government through your tax dollars. And there is no such thing as private companies like ComEd and Ameren who actually facilitate getting you energy and allowing you to turn your lights on anyway. So the question is, who is going to step into the ring and take on Pritzker? Well, we have that DuPage County Sheriff, James Mendrick. And I'm just going to list the serious ones right now. There are some very unserious people who have entered the race. The serious candidates, Sheriff James Mendrick. Now, he's been dealing with Democrats on the ground, not in some cushy committee hearing. I don't know. He is in real world law enforcement. Okay. So he says, I'm done with politicians. Good. We don't really need a politician in there. Ted Dabrowski is not a politician. He's a mathematician, if I had to, label Ted Dabrowski. This guy is a sheriff. He's been boots on the ground, but we have to remember that, like I said, I don't like the back the blue, just blanket statement. He's in politics. He's a sheriff. He's been elected. He's had to obviously participate in elections as a sheriff. And, I don't want a Republican candidate who sounds like they're applying for a job at the Chamber of Commerce instead of running to save the state. And I think James Mendrick, he's attractive in that sense because he's portraying himself as an outsider, being that he's not your typical legislator. But we have to remember he's also still very entrenched in politics. He's not my favorite pick. I'm just going to be honest with you. He's not my favorite. My favorite is Ted Dabrowski. He's the president of WirePoints. This is a guy who knows Illinois books better than Governor J.B. Pritzker's accountants. He knows them very, very well. He says that Illinois should be a top 5 state, okay, for growth and opportunity. But right now we're at the bottom 5. And like I said, Illinois is just racing towards the bottom. And he's right. Illinois has all the advantages. We have a central location. We have fertile farmland. We have infrastructure, and we are driving people out so fast in this state, and it's just not sustainable. And I really like how quick Ted Dabrowski is on his feet. He just seems really well-rounded, as a person. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm sure somebody will enter the race a little bit later. Right now, if the election were held today, I'd definitely be voting Ted Dabrowski if he were to actually enter, but he is just a possible candidate right now. The only candidate worth talking about is Sheriff James Mendrick. So, yeah. The biblical perspective here, and I want to talk about Proverbs. In the book of Proverbs, it talks about when the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. So that is where Illinois is right now. Like, the wicked people are running the state, and we are groaning. Folks, the state families are packing up their U-Hauls like Israelites fleeing Egypt. Okay, the promised land is probably like Florida or Tennessee, but here in Illinois, there is a pharaoh, and his name is Governor J.B. Pritzker. There's nothing new under the sun. There are people fleeing the state because of the tyrannical leadership that is Governor J.B. Pritzker. And just like in the Bible, God raises up leaders in dark times. Could one of these Republican hopefuls be that person? And that's the question we've got to ask. Is this a biblical leader, a godly leader? And we need a Moses. Okay, we don't need an Aaron who's polishing a golden calf, the golden calf of bipartisanship. We don't need that while the state is burning down, because far too often we have candidates who enter the race and then they to put this bluntly, they polish the golden calf of bipartisanship. They say, oh, we have to reach across the aisle. We have to work with our colleagues across the aisle. And, I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of those really weak Republicans. And I'm going to be honest. I mean, from what I heard, in the very small clips that I had seen, it sounds like the message overall was, hey, Illinois is still worth fighting for. It's not dead yet. This is our message. And the filing period for the March 17th primary starts October 27th. Okay, so between now and then, Republicans need to do three things. Okay, so write this down. Here's what Republicans need to do. They need to speak plain truth. And they did a pretty good job with that at the Illinois State Fair. There weren't like a ton of political consultant approved buzzwords. Bipartisanship, reach across the aisle. Those are the kind of buzzwords that I'm thinking of. I didn't hear a lot of those from the clips that I saw, but we're going to have David on to tell us a little bit more about it here in just a little bit. But we need to tell people exactly how Democrat policies are wrecking their communities. How we pay the highest cell phone taxes in the entire nation. So, for example, I tell you every day on this show, how these policies affect your life directly. So, for example, the cell phone bill, you look at your cell phone bill, if you're paying $100, $38 of that is just going straight to taxes. So how fair is that? That is not pro-working family, like Governor J.B. Pritzker says, because most working families like to call grandma, on the weekends, or FaceTime grandma on the weekends, and you're charging her $38 a month to do that. And you're taking that money via taxes. We need to offer real solutions. I talked about this yesterday. A lot of Republicans, and I hope that these Republican candidates that we have now, that they aren't about the solutions of creating a task force or let's create a panel or a commission to study it. That's not a real solution. Real solutions are lowering taxes, parental rights, securing our borders, protecting life. And above all, they all have to be, your candidate of choice has to be a godly man or woman. Okay. And we have to stay on the offensive, because the only thing Democrats fear more than losing power is having to defend their record, which is why, and I've seen this happen before in the homeschool bill. I think that actually Stephanie Trussell, she was Darren Bailey's lieutenant governor pick. She's running against Tara Coster Howard, that state representative who launched, I think it was House Bill 2827. I think I got the number right, but it had to deal with homeschooling, and it put all kinds of limitations on homeschooling and regulated homeschooling. And the Capitol was full of people who were pissed off about that bill. And I've never seen this before, where the supermajority party introduces a bill and just the sheer backlash shuts them down, like from the people, the constituency. And that bill was shut down just straight up by your voices. Okay, so I've never seen that before. They have the super majority, and typically they just say, piss off to the constituency. But when it gets loud enough, they can't say that. So they have to defend their policies then in front of your face. And that is something that they fear. They do not want to defend their policies or defend their record because they really can't. Okay, they're indefensible policies. And we need to stay on the offensive and call them out for their specific policies and say, hey, this is how this policy affects me directly. Why'd you vote for this? And you need to call them, Republicans, Democrats alike, hey, Republican, why'd you create a task force? That's not a real solution. Why don't you get Governor J.B. Pritzker or get a Democrat, one Democrat on your side to introduce a bill that says, hey, let's ban Chinese ownership of farmland. Why don't you do that rather than create a task force or study the problem? We've really got to dig our heels in and fight and offer real solutions. And I get it, you're the minority party and it sucks. And you're like, how do I do this? How do the Democrats do it? Do what they're doing, just do the opposite. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd imagine that Democrats, in order for them to, push policies, and they don't agree on everything all of the time, but they sure as hell put that face forward, that they agree on everything all of the time. But behind closed doors, I'm sure that there's threats going on. Like, hey, you have to get behind this policy or otherwise you're not going to serve on this committee anymore. You're not going to chair this committee. I'd imagine that kind of stuff happens all the time. So Republicans have to do that, where they say, hey, you have to get behind this policy. Otherwise, you're not going to chair this committee. Otherwise, you're not going to be on this committee. Otherwise, you're not going to, they have to hold each other accountable and they have to be united. And be united with a clear MAGA, Make America Great Again, Illinois First Again approach. Not this like, oh, we have to work across the aisle approach. Okay, they have to be united in this movement, this conservative movement and America First policy movement. Okay, so from butter cow to ballot box, the fight for Illinois is on. So let's make sure this time that the good guys don't just show up to the fair, but they actually win the prize hog ribbon, okay, which is their position that they're running for. And I'm sure there's a lot of good candidates out there. You're just going to have to do your research and ask them tough questions. Ask them hypothetical questions about how they'd vote on certain bills. How would you vote on House Bill 2827? How would you vote on, SB 2372? How would you vote on these types of bills? All right, so let's get to the electric bills because it is quite a scorcher today. It's going to probably be here in Illinois, central Illinois. It's going to get up to like 90 something degrees, which is insane. Here in Illinois, we've got a governor who thinks that he is a kind, compassionate protector, and he swoops in and he makes sure that nobody's lights are turned off when it's 90 degrees or more, or when the winter wind bites. Okay. And at first glance, and when I tell you about this, you're going to be like, well, yeah, Kat, that's compassionate. Aren't we as Christians called to be compassionate? No, we're actually called to tell the truth. And I know that you're going to look at this and you're going to say, hey, this is a little compassion from the state. This is actually good policy. It's not, because the devil's in the details here. And the devil's name is Governor J.B. Pritzker. So let's look at this. A few years back, Governor J.B. Pritzker, he actually signed a law into effect, which was the banning the utility companies from disconnecting power or gas when it's extremely hot or when it's freezing cold outside. Okay. Now, let's be honest. Nobody wants grandma to freeze in the dark in January. Okay. And nobody wants her cooking in August because she misses a payment. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who are frequently delinquent on their payments. They have not paid a bill and they still get power despite them not paying their bill. And like, let's face it, this is like 8 months out of the year where Illinois tends to be hotter than 90 degrees and cooler than 32 degrees. It's very rare where you get like, days outside of that. I would say like 8 months out of the year, it's like above 90 or below 32. So the issue here is what happens when the people don't pay. because somebody always has to pay and cover that cost because they're delivering a service, ComEd, Ameren, whoever it is, they're delivering a service, and that service costs money to provide because guess what? People have to turn that energy into lights and get that into your house. Okay, there's a complete process. There's linemen, there's power lines, there's things that have to go up. So this is providing you a service, and there's people who work to provide you that service. So therefore, it comes at a cost. The infrastructure to provide you that service, the power lines have a hard cost. State Representative Brad Holbrook says that somebody is you. Somebody has to cover that cost, and it's you and I. The person who actually pays their bills on time, person who actually winds up paying their bills. So Holbrook said if the utility companies and the energy companies can't shut off their service for non-payment during extreme weather, let's be real, Illinois is always extremely something. It's either extremely cold or extremely half of the year, at least half of the year. Okay. They don't swallow that loss. The companies don't swallow that loss. They just tack it on to your bill. The people who actually pay their bills, they tack it on in the form of a surcharge, a fee, and it'll be a line item. Like if you look at your power bill, most likely there's a line item. So Holbrook actually looked at an Ameren bill, and he found 6 to 8 different line items. And these line items laid out taxes, or LIHEAP, which is the Low Income House Energy Assistance Program, which is federally backed, by the way. Federal tax dollars go towards this. But the Climate Equitable Job Act fees, there's fees there. It's like opening a bag of potato chips. When you open up your Ameren bill, it's like opening a bag of potato chips. And have you ever opened a bag of potato chips and it's like 60% air and 40% like potato chips? Okay, so that's kind of like how your bill is. Like, you're not even really being charged a whole lot for, I mean, it is, and that went up, the kilowatts per, or cents per kilowatt, right? That went up, but a lot of this is through these surcharges. And it's worth noting here that the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program is growing. So that's where this is, and it's federally backed. It's the federally backed program. So federal tax dollars go into this. And it might sound noble, this program, but 333,000 households in Illinois got help between July of 2023 and September of 2024. That's nearly 10,000 more from the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that, the year before that. So it's growing exponentially, which means and tells me that people here in the state of Illinois cannot pay their bills, and they cannot pay an energy bill, and that they need help from the government to do it. So we are in a whole lot of trouble, and I'm all for charity, but I'm not for forced charity. Okay. The Bible commands us to help the poor. Yes. But there's a difference between charity and like it being voluntary and forced charity through bloated government programs. That isn't generosity. It's coercion. It's control. Really what needs to happen is we need to make it more affordable here in the state where these people don't have to go on the LIHEAP program. And, really it's Caesar taking from your pocket, skimming a cut for his friends, and then tossing the leftovers to those he deems worthy. Okay, that's what's going on. He's taking from your pocket. He's providing tax credits, like Governor J.B. Pritzker provides tax credit. Excuse me. Live show. Oh, I was talking so fast. So he provides tax credits to his friends, okay, to preferred industries that he likes. And, I want to talk about the story that went viral. This is a Pekin restaurant. It's called Hacienda Cantina and Grill. This is a Mexican restaurant. Their bill was $5,000 for 1 month. And I mean, you would think that they were running a, industrial steel mill, not serving up margaritas and tacos, okay, for $5,000 a month. And that's just an unsustainable bill for a place that sells tacos and margaritas. Like, you've got to charge $20 for a margarita, which they do. Not Hacienda, but like it's gotten expensive out there to go eat, right? And you've got to charge like exorbitant prices for these tacos and margaritas. It's unsustainable. And not only that, there's people on fixed incomes, retirees, disabled people, single moms out there who are going to have to decide, hey, do I want air conditioning in July or am I going to have to pay for my groceries? So let's be blunt. Some people are going to choose to sweat it out, and that completely undermines the whole like compassion thing behind Pritzker's law, the shutoff law, right? The law was intended to be compassionate for the people who couldn't pay their bills, and you don't shut off their, well, guess what? People are going to have to decide to shut off or not shut off now anyway, because we've gotten to a point where it's too expensive to keep the air conditioning on and also buy groceries. So the whole supposed compassion bill that he signed isn't very compassionate at all. It's led us to a point where everybody is going to have to make the decision to shut their air conditioning off in July. So now the media, when the media asked whether energy companies might seek, asked whether energy companies are going to seek taxpayer-funded bailouts, Bill Howder, State Representative Bill Howder, said it's possible. So here's what I think is really going on, and maybe I'm a bit conspiratorial, and Republicans, I think this is a noble. They're wanting to call a special session to address the energy costs because this is really affecting people now, the energy bills. And they want to call a special session to address it, but I'm really worried about calling this special session because here's what I think is going to wind up happening. They're going to give a bailout to these companies. And what do I mean by that? ComEd, Ameren, they're going to get all kinds of taxpayer cash to lower those bills artificially. Okay. And I mean, it's kind of like bailouts are kind of like giving a sugar rush to a diabetic, a short-term fix, but there's going to be an underlying condition that's worse. Okay. You're still taxing the people. And there is that is not a solution. You're just going to make it worse in the end. And really what they're trying to do is transition us from private companies like ComEd and Ameren to a state-run energy company. And when you're funding the energy companies and you're backing them and bailing them out all the time, they're not even their own company at that point. Okay, so the real solution would be more electricity. And how do we do that? Well, we can't depend on sun and wind. Okay, that is just BS and they're unreliable. We need nuclear power. And Howder nailed it. He said, it's nuclear power, stupid. I'm paraphrasing, but he says it's nuclear power. That's the answer. Now, let me make this simple. If you care about the planet, you can't be opposed to nuclear. Okay. If you say you care about the planet and you oppose nuclear, you're not a serious person. Nuclear is clean, it's reliable, it's scalable. And in Illinois, believe it or not, it's already there. Like we already have the infrastructure. We have been a history, or have had a history of being a nuclear leader. Howder helped push a bipartisan bill. Now there are whispers that Governor J.B. Pritzker might come around to lifting the ban on nuclear here in the state. Howder pushed a bipartisan bill to lift the moratorium on small nuclear plants. Now we need to open up the larger nuclear plants. There's still a moratorium on that, like a ban on those. So we need some common sense in Springfield. And they need to bring nuclear. We need more power, okay, to meet the demand and to lower the cost. So, and we need to get rid of these stupid little bills that tack on all of these stupid little laws that tack on all of these surcharges, like the no shutoffs. Like that's just gay, like I'm sorry. That might seem compassionate, but look at where we're at now. People are deciding between groceries and keeping their AC off anyway during the hot months. So it's not very compassionate because somebody ultimately has to pay for that. And it's going to be you and I, the people who do wind up paying for their bills, paying their bills. So we need common sense prevailed. And here's the problem. Nuclear doesn't fit. And this is why they've been so anti-nuclear. It doesn't fit their control through crisis model. Okay. if you just flip a switch and the lights, you just flip a switch and the lights stay on with nuclear. Okay. Now with wind and with solar, it's not as like control through crisis mode, because on a cloudy day, on a windy day, right, they can control that energy, and it's not just flip a switch and there's the power. It doesn't serve the left's real agenda of picking winners and losers and turning energy into a political weapon. Because I could foresee where Governor J.B. Pritzker, like, I could see like an app where they say, hey, be sure to only run your dishwasher, at this time, and there's going to be a small monthly fee if you run it outside that time, and then there's going to be like a motivational quote, attached to the app, of saving the planet. Hey, you're saving the planet one step at a time. We're all in. I could imagine something like that is in their heads. They want to be able to control it, and when you have reliable energy, there is no control through crisis mode. Okay, I do want to bring on David Paul. I don't know. I think that he's gone. Hopefully he comes back. Good morning, Conservative Cat. He was at the state fair. We're going to try to bring him back here, hopefully, in a little bit. I went a little winded, but from a Christian perspective, I want to bring up Proverbs 27:23 about the energy thing. Okay, we have to be diligent to know the state of our flocks, to attend your herd, and to attend your herds. Okay, this is what Proverbs 27:23 says. In modern terms, be diligent, know the state of your grid, your fuel supply, and your infrastructure. Okay, so as Christians, we're supposed to, stewardship is key, and God gave us this earth and expects us to use the resources wisely, and that doesn't mean abusing it or crippling human flourishment through artificial scarcity. Okay, so let's bring on DPB. DPB, sorry, it took me a little while to wrap up that story. How you doing this morning? Oh, for some odd reason.
I got it right now. I had to jump off and jump back on because I froze up here in my studio.
Oh, that's all right.
That's why I was gone. And if you look at me, it is still early morning, but I spent a whole day in utter hell on earth.
Oh boy. All right. So we are going to be talking about the Illinois State Fair.
I heard you already talking about it, Kat.
The clips I saw, I mean, and I know I can't fall into the lip service because this always happens to me every single year, but it sounded like, hey, Illinois is not done. I was shocked to hear Tony McCombie bring up that President Donald Trump was a leading Republican. In the last 20 years, we haven't seen a Republican perform like that in Illinois. I was shocked that she brought that up. What did you see at the Illinois State Fair at Republican Day, and your takeaway?
Kat, I happen to be part of the joint meeting between the Central States Committee. And what is the Central States Committee? Each congressional district in Illinois has a representative of what's called the Central States Committee. That means that they represent all of the county Republican parties, okay? So they represent a district, a congressional district, and they have a committee which is chaired by the chair of the party, Kathy Salvi. Each one of these positions has a deputy chair, so it's a pretty large group of people because there's 17, then you have a deputy chair. That makes 34. You have Kathy Salvi, the chair, with her people. Then you have the RNC committee person, national committee person. And there's a man and a woman. So there's a chairwoman and chairman. And then you have all of the counties and their chairs are at this morning meeting on Republican Day at the fair. Exhale. Kat, there was so much smoke in that room that I was stoned.
Oh boy. So
Kat, Cat,
Tell
it's
me
smoke and mirrors, smoke and mirrors. Cat. We've got a lot to cover here in a short period of time. But Cat, it all finally made sense to me after being there yesterday. It wasn't very well attended. Usually when you climb the hill to the state fairgrounds after this morning meeting session, this rah-rah session that really never hit. And I want everyone to go out to Tazewell County Republicans, Tazewell County Republicans, Tazewell County Republicans, and read Jim Rule's directive. He basically put forth what we need to do. But I want to make sure I get that out. But as you climb the hill, usually there's the Democrats have put their signs along the road, but we have no candidates running at the upper level. I mean, we have people who have announced, okay, and I heard you briefly cover that. But Kat, it all makes sense, like I started saying. J.B. Pritzker gerrymandered, redistrict the maps. If you control 82% of the congressional districts, you're going to control the General Assembly. Just is the facts. Running for office in any of those,
that you're going to control Congress, you're going to control all of it.
Well, he controls Congress. He controls every state held position, comptroller, treasurer. What else you got in there? Comptroller, treasurer, attorney general, secretary of state, lieutenant governor. I mean, all of the major state races are controlled by the Democrats. You talk about hypocrisy when it comes to J.B. Pritzker in this whole Texas remapping or redistricting. This has been years in the works. Now, where do we get viable candidates from to run for statewide offices? Well, we have no other bench than the 3 congressional seats that we control: Darren LaHood, Mary Miller, and Mike Bost. That would be the 12th, the 15th, and the 16th. Those are the only congressional districts where we probably can really make headway into gathering state reps and state senators. You're not going to go into a Dem district, congressional district, and try to pick off seats. I mean, you have to try to attempt it, but ultimately, our state reps, well, first and foremost, we know our Congress people are not going to run for governor, U.S. Senate, or statewide offices. So where are those people going to come from? Well, where I believe they should have come from is from the bench. And the only bench we have 118 state rep districts in Illinois, 59 state Senate districts. In the House of the General Assembly, we have 40 of those 118. Do the math on it, you can get a percentage. It's actually a little higher than the 18% that we control in congressional seats. So just a little bit of give. We have 18 of the 59 Senate seats. Well, those people who have been in Springfield need to step up and get their clipboards and not rerun for their state Senate seat or their state House seat. They need to run for these statewide offices. And somebody says, yeah, but it's a given that they're not going to win. It's not a matter if you win. It's principles. It's principles. And that's what Jim Rule writes about in his Tazewell County. We've got to change the culture. We've got to change leadership. If we were a corporation, the Illinois GOP, whoever came in consulting us would have cleaned house. The deck would have been clear. Because ultimately you can't do something. You can't take somebody somewhere that you weren't able to go. The people that are in there led us in the leadership positions of the Illinois GOP. The people in leadership right now have led us to where we're at. Mm-hmm. And that's Minority Leader McCombie. That's Minority Leader Curran. That's Kathy Salvi. That's the Central States Committee. That's even most of the county chairs are squatters. We don't have a lot of people out there working day in, day out to make Illinois great again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I find it interesting that you talked about, this bench of all these state reps, and Dan Ugasti, he was kind of whispered, and then he came out and said that he's not going to be running. And now I'm thinking about it, like John Curran was sitting there saying, like, oh yeah, we need a candidate who's, going to save Illinois and take the fight to Governor J.B. Pritzker, who isn't even really governing Illinois, and he's looking to boost his national profile, and I'm paraphrasing. And I'm thinking to myself now, it's like, why doesn't John Curran run? A lot of people.
No, why doesn't Tony step up and run for comptroller, treasurer? Why doesn't John Curran run? Why doesn't their deputies within, Tony has a whole plethora. Tony McCombie has.
I imagine that
Ryan Spain from Peoria could run. Travis Weaver, even though he's relatively new as a House rep, he could run for something. There are bright young people, but they're looking to. So, Kat, getting back here,
they don't want to take this risk of losing their
payday, their guaranteed payday. Yeah,
their current representative spot. Although I'd imagine their districts are very safe, so I feel like you could run a Republican in Tony McCombie's district who nobody really. They're going to vote
Bill Howder or Dennis Tipsword or Travis Weaver or Blaine Wilhauer or Adam Niemerg. Even our guys, I'm going to tell you, even Brad Halbeck, anybody on the Freedom Caucus, yesterday was a wake-up call. I'm going to have this conversation. I'm having it right now, right? So I guess I don't have to have it with them because I'm going to broadcast it because I'm done. It doesn't matter whether I like you or not. I like those guys. But what are we doing to move the needle? What are the results?
They're already safe. Like those districts are already safe because they've made it the Democrats where, okay, we'll give you, some.
Darren LaHood's seat would be won by a Republican. Mary Miller's seat would be run by a Republican. Mike Boss' seat would be won by a Republican. We have 3 people in 3 who have the bandwidth because they've already run campaigns in big districts, right? And they're well-funded. Darren LaHood is very well-funded. They could take on a U.S. Senate or a governor race, right?
Mm-hmm.
Darren Bailey has the bandwidth. U.S. Senate was announced Don Tracy, former Illinois GOP chair. Go to Don Tracy's Facebook page. I sent him a friend request. It's the least I can do. He has 895 friends. I'm sorry. How are you going to get traction when your social media platforms don't even have followings and you're going to be a candidate? But getting back to the energy, Kat, I want to talk about the energy. Kat, it doesn't matter what Bill Howder or any Republican rep says. They're not going to call a special session. JB through executive caveat might bring nuclear power back online because he realizes how failed his wind and solar is on achieving what he believed was going to happen with 1 million EV cars. But Kat, there's a reason why we can't legislate because we don't have any credibility because we don't have, if we had 45 to 43% of the General Assembly, we could get stuff done.
Yeah, and that special session, like, it'd be great to call, like, I guess, but like you're kind of playing into the Dems' hands. Like, I feel like they are always like 3 steps behind what the Democrats are. Like, if they called a special session, here's how the special session would go. The ComEd, Ameren, they'd get a taxpayer-funded bailout. I mean, that's literally all they can do at this point is to bail them out or to bring more nuclear online, which they might do. But it's whatever the supermajority wants. So if the supermajority wants taxpayer-funded bailouts for these companies, which is just, not a long-term solution, then that's what they're going to do. If that's what they want to do, and that's what they would want to do. They don't want nuclear. But I don't know, maybe now it sounds like Governor J.B. Pritzker is willing to hear that out, shockingly lifting the ban off of nuclear power. But we'll have to see. I don't know.
Chess and checkers. we in the Republican Party are playing checkers and the Democrats are playing chess. Now, Kat, you brought up a point about the poor people, right? Compassion for the least of these, which compassion is love. That's what compassion is loving somebody enough to tell them that they've got to go a different way. That's true compassion. Paying somebody, that's what the government wants. They want to take from the rich and give to the poor. That's the branding of the Democrat Party. They come to destroy everything. They don't have a problem having poor people in homeless encampments. No matter what they say, they don't care. They need homeless people. They need chaos in the streets, because if they don't have major crises, then how would they govern? They can't govern over something that's functioning because it's out of their league. They don't know what to do when things are productive.
Well, the welfare state is the new slavery. They want these people enslaved to them and reliant on the LIHEAP program or reliant on the no shutoff law that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed into law just a few years ago. They need people relying on that. It's not even robbing the rich for the poor. It's really just robbing people who pay their bills on time, which aren't necessarily rich people, right? You're taking from those people, you're adding on all these surcharges to cover the cost the hard cost that it costs you as a ComEd or Ameren to provide power to these people who won't pay their bills. So yeah, it's just a whole mess. And I think you're right. Like there is no getting out of this until you have Republicans who say, look, I'm in a Republican safe district, like especially even these downstate Republicans, like Adam Niemeyer, you had mentioned Don Tracy, 80 or 800 friends or whatever. Yeah. These guys are well known, like believe it or not, in the state of Illinois, like the Freedom Caucus members, Chris Miller, Adam Niemeyer, a lot of these people,
Brad Holbrook, know
these downstate reps.
Jed Davis was going to throw his name in the hat for a congressional seat up in the 14th. James Martyr, our friend James Martyr, he's been on our programs before. He's now the only Republican candidate, because Jed decided not to do that. Jed is part of the Illinois Freedom Caucus and the state rep. And
he should have threw his hat in for governor.
But that's what I'm saying. The leaders that we have aren't leading. And they say, well, we don't want to sacrifice our seats. You're not. Those are safe seats. We have 33% of the House seats in the General Assembly. That means, if my math is correct, they have 67%. They're in a super majority. 78 House reps, 41 senators to our 18. Kat, my point being, and I know I'm looking you in the eye right now, even though I should be looking in the camera. Kat, let me get up on my camera.
I'm looking at
this is the advice that the wealthiest man in Illinois, used to be the wealthiest man in Illinois until he moved to Miami, Ken Griffin, gave Darren Bailey when Darren called him about running for governor of Illinois. He said, Darren, I'm not going to give you any money. Darren's like, wow, okay, the richest man in Illinois, $26 billion. But I would like to give you some advice. You know what that advice was, Kat?
What's that?
And this is when this man was living in the state.
Mm-hmm.
He was funding Richard Irvin for the gubernatorial race, but not Darren Bailey. He said, Darren, I'm going to give you some advice. Get out of Illinois. That was his advice. And I know that seems doom and gloom and down, but you know what? I'm not about blowing smoke and telling people, what was that old, saying, don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining. Well, that's kind of what this is. Don't blow smoke.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, some people will tell me, oh, I don't vote anymore. And I've never understood that until recently, where I voted for somebody and then they were like caught posing at an LGBTQ pride. Like this was a Republican I voted for, and they were like posing with a pride coalition, a local pride coalition. And I'm like, I just cast my vote for that guy. And I'm like really disappointed. And I almost like, dissuades me from voting again because I don't want to be caught with my foot in my mouth again, you know. And now when people tell me, it's not worth it, Kat, I'm sorry, I'm just not voting in the state of Illinois because, you know, some of these people I vote for, they're not leaders. They vote for things that I don't like, and that it's terrible votes, and they vote with the Democrats on issues. I mean, there's been some Republicans who voted for that homeschooling bill, the 2827. Unanimously, I talked about this yesterday. They voted to expand the powers of the ICC, the Illinois Commerce Commission, to go after tow truck companies and impound tow truck vehicles. Like, I feel like a Republican tenant is, hey, you know, let's not expand the powers of bureaucracy and state agencies, you know, no matter what it is, you know. And it wasn't even all that prevalent of a problem, you know, predatory towing. It was happening in Chicago because crime, if you were to just crack down on crime, theft, fraud, extortion, and if you were to just police the laws that we already have on the books, I think it'd be all right. You don't need to expand the powers of the state agency, but all the Republicans voted for it. So it's like, I don't get mad at people when they say I don't vote anymore, because like, who can blame you when your vote turns out to be not worth like anything?
Well, but that's what I'm saying. The district maps basically do exempt your vote. You know, if you're voting in, if you once again, we know how crazy the map looked because Stephen Colbert called Governor J.B. Pritzker out on his show and showed him, like, and JB's comment was, well, I had kindergartners. No, it takes more sophistication to draw the maps the way they are than kindergarten. They are very calculated. Mathematically, they are down to the block group, right? Mm-hmm. So in your district, you look at the 91st state rep district. It literally comes into Bloomington normal, and then it shoots down 74, but avoids the conservative strongholds like in Woodford County and in Tazewell County. But then it sneaks back in and grabs a little bit of East Peoria, Pekin, you know, along the river where predominantly Democrats tend to live. It's a district that makes you realize, you talk to people because I live in that district, but that doesn't mean there's no Republicans. Let's make sure that we're clear on this. There's Republicans in every district, but the percentages of these Dem districts don't allow. And somebody says, well, you got to get more voter turnout. They have calculated that the only way you win is getting something like 70% voter turnout. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. There, it's in the yellow. I can see it from here. Expand upon it there, Kat. Look at that. Look at that gerrymander district. Look at what it does. It literally tries to pick up the base. Look at that right there. The population centers, the inner cities. And that's where they get the universities, and they go in and they tell you that the people that are running against me, they want to kill grandma. They want to take away all of your benefits. They want to make sure that transgender people are put in prisons. They're confined. They're locked up. They're actually put in what are those called? What were the old mental hospitals? But they're terrible people. Those are Republicans. Yeah,
and well, they've bought the votes of these people through the welfare state. Peoria, Bloomington, you know, the impoverished people there, they've bought through the welfare state their vote, or through these nonprofit organizations, which they give these people these jobs. They're lower than functioning people.
Yep.
Really, these people need mental institutions, help, insane asylums, right? Lisa's chiming in. But instead of putting them where they belong, either even in prison or mental institutions, they'll put them in these nonprofit organizations, and then they'll give them a T-shirt and tell them to go lobby, and they'll pay pennies, cards even, to go lobby on behalf of the Democrats. And quite literally, it's like exploiting mentally ill or lower functioning people, not encouraging them to get jobs, jobs that they'd be able to handle, a dishwashing job or something like that. And, one thing about Donald Trump and the Make America Great Again, there is no status, like, oh, that is just a low level job, and why would we work that? There's pride in working that.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why I think that Donald Trump went to McDonald's. Part of it was to meme on Kamala Harris because she never actually worked there. But there's no, there's no shame in working those types of jobs, and that's what the Republican Party is all about. Is like, hey, working families, actually working families, but they want these people in those rural or those urban areas to convince them that, hey, don't work those low-level jobs. We'll put you in this nonprofit organization, make you feel really important. We'll pay you pennies on the dollar to pretty much be our lobbying arm and our get out the vote staff. Like, that is what they do in these urban areas.
Well, I'm gonna critique you because it isn't pennies on the dollar. They'll give you $2 for a job that only is $1, because the money that they're getting isn't earned income. It's federal tax dollars. It's state tax dollars. They have loaded the. I mean, you talk about flood the zone. It's the perfect plan. The Democrats they have worked for decades to create the behemoth system that they have currently in place. It's totally ineffective. As President Trump said, and I've got the video, Kat, Brandon Johnson's incompetent to run a city. I don't know what else his qualifications are. He was part of the teachers union for the longest time, so he's a former teacher at some point. And Governor Pritzker was thrown out of his family business. I mean, his family didn't even want him. They told him to go over there. We'll make sure you get your dividend checks. We'll make sure that you'll always be a billionaire, but get away from the business because you can't run a business. He's incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're at in our country. I think
it's private sector versus public sector, and they don't want to threaten or upend their lifestyles of taking from taxpayers.
Governing, yep.
Not making a product, not providing a service, and they want to convince these people in the urban areas that you don't have to do it either. You don't have to make the product to perform a service and then get paid in turn for that. You don't have to do that. We'll pay you. And we'll.
So you're saying we're not supposed to be a feudal system?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought the radical left was all big about not having kings, but it sure appears that they have kings because they take from the rich and give to the poor, and they create peasant states. And they create, like you said, forced slavery because you're dependent upon the government for everything. That's who these people are. Now, I know you're going to transition, Kat, and you're going to take because we want to take it back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why it is that Trump is federalizing the cleanup of the homeless encampments and the gangbangers, the juveniles that aren't currently serving time in a juvenile detention center, which is they need to be reprogrammed because they've been indoctrinated to be part of the street gangs are part of the Democrat Party. They need their foot soldiers. They need crime. But do you know why it is that he's doing that in DC?
Probably. We're getting closer to an election. I mean, he's really making these Dems put their foot in their mouth. I mean, who would argue against cleaning up crime? Right, this is a pretty nonpartisan issue, and he's making them look stupid.
Bigger than that, Kat. Bigger than that. I want you to think bigger. Why do you think that President Trump is telling JB he's coming to Chicago? He's going to tell Gavin Newsom he's coming into L.A. He's putting them on notice that he's going to federalize these police forces. Do you know what happens when there's major events in this country that impact the Democrat Party? Do you know what happens in our big cities?
No.
What happened during the Summer of Love, during 2020 and the George Floyd?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Major riots and burning down of buildings and mass chaos, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what, Kat? Guess what's coming down the pipe? There's a reason the National Guard.
He knows that it's coming up, and he's like, hey, before you even do it, I'm going to talk about federalizing and bringing my guys.
That's right. But Kat, even bigger. I know that you've been tuned into what Tulsi Gabbard's doing, and this isn't conspiratorial. This is the director of national intelligence. Kat, there's going to be some arrests coming down the pipe. They're going to start doing exactly what they did to Trump. They're going to arrest him and get mugshots. And guess who those mugshots are going to be of? There's going to be a mugshot of Clapper, Comey, Brennan, and Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton. You know, when they start arresting people like that, you know what's going to happen in the big cities? They're going to go into meltdown mode.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't imagine what's going to happen if you put Barack Obama, their beloved golden calf, in handcuffs. They're going to start losing their minds in Chicago.
Well, maybe not in handcuffs, but at least a mugshot.
Yeah.
They're going to arrest him for crimes against the country, crimes against humanity, treason, traitor. He's a traitor. I was listening to George Papadopoulos on Matt Gates's program on OAN, and it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole cleanup, which is important, of the big cities and getting crime under control, because they are, but that's what the Democrat Party, they don't want crime to stop in their cities. They want to arrest these kids and put them back on the street.
I did want to show our listeners, because you touched on this, about how some of these districts are really safe. Okay, so if you just look at Regan Deering's district, which is always really crowded every single year. So notice how her district doesn't even include, like, I'm pretty sure Regan is from
She's from Macon County. Yep.
It's
from
really
around.
They carve.
But she lives outside, because obviously that's Decatur.
Yeah.
And if you blow it up a little bit more, that's the inner part of Decatur. Regan probably lives out to right there.
Yeah.
Right in that area where your cursor is. Yep.
This is a very safe district, okay? Because they have drawn it in such a way where they don't even have Decatur in it. Literally, this is all like rural, very rural, okay? Very rural districts. Anchor, Illinois, Cooksville, right? They even carved out bits of Bloomington here. Like, this is
it's all the east side of Bloomington. So predominantly your
farmers.
Well, and not only that, it's your state farmers. It's more of your conservative Republican voting. I mean, some of those neighborhoods, it's not to say there's not Democrats and crazy liberals in there. But
well, let's take a look at, maybe some of these other ones, like downstate. I'm looking for Blaine's. Yeah, here's Blaine's.
Yeah.
Another real safe one. Okay. So they, don't have any really big urban areas in this district. I mean, these are all very safe. I think that, Regan's is a great example.
Well, Regan ran unopposed.
Yeah.
Blaine had a Democrat run, I think, but Blaine ends up with 85%.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And whoever's district this is, I mean, this looks really safe. Oh yeah, Chris Miller. So like these are very, very safe districts. They, carve out cities and they are designed for Republicans. So it doesn't really matter who you'd put in there. They definitely would win because
they would do the same thing in the General Assembly. They would get the same output in the General Assembly. Because once again, nothing you propose. I mean, bless the Freedom Caucus's heart. I appreciate gathering together like-minded people. But even the Freedom Caucus is not going to make any headway until the people within the Freedom Caucus step up and seek higher office. That's what this thing should be. It should be a revolving door.
Yeah, and just like make them nervous a little bit,
that somebody cares enough.
Me or a John Curran were to run for governor, or even like a statewide office, I think that would ruffle some feathers, and that would really tell them, hey, we're not backing down from a fight. I'm not worried about losing my district. I'm not worried about not winning.
I'm not worried about collecting my mailbox money. Guaranteed paycheck that comes for 74 days of session. Bottom line is that's the only way we're going to lift and get any traction is if, and unfortunately, excuse me, live TV, live podcasting. That's the reason Tom DeVore's out there screaming that, bottom line is we should primary all of these people, even if they're in a safe district, because they need to be primaried because they're not willing to get out of their comfort zone. You know, the old saying, the cross, there's comfort in the cross. So you can find comfort in the cross of Christ, but the cross is not comfortable. We have too many people that want to be comfortable on the cross. I'm sorry, Kat. When you're out there defending the King of Kings, the Lords of Lords, the everlasting God, you're going to endure people think you're safe once you're a Christian. No, you're not safe.
No.
The devil wants you, and you get attacked every day.
Yeah, and I wonder, and I don't know what their personal, faith journeys are like, but, I wonder how many taps on the shoulder they have gotten from, the Lord Almighty to move on and to do something, bigger than themselves and to run for a statewide office, and how often they ignore it. I'd be curious, and I'm like looking up their, I'd imagine John Kern has quite the social media following.
Well, I know where he ate dinner last night because Desi Anderson let me know that he was at Distill because she was at Distill right there on Towanda Avenue in the shops of College Hills. John was on his way back from Springfield. She stopped by his table and he says, "Oh yeah, I eat here often at Distill." Well, at least he came and gave his tax money to sales tax money to the Bloomingtonians. Well, I guess that's normal.
Yeah,
the normalites.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at his social media page right now. Now, I mean, it's like 5,000 is what he's got for Senator John Kern page, but that is like substantially higher than, your James Medrick, who's running for governor. Kern's a, pretty household name in Illinois politics, I would say.
What is Tom DeVore's following on social media? I'll give it to you. 64,000. What is Darren's? 130,000. What is Darren Bailey's? 130,000. What is Darren LaHood? 34,000. So he's 30,000 below Tom DeVore. But Tom DeVore also ran for a statewide office, Attorney General. Darren is only in a congressional district. Mary Miller is about 30,000.
Well, and as outsiders too. So Darren Bailey, well, not Darren Bailey. Darren Bailey was a sitting state senator before. And I think he had, success in the state of Illinois, not the ultimate, prize. But I think he had a ton of success. And clearly, by social media following, you can't deny that. But, Tom DeVore kind of came in as an outsider. Could you imagine if you had...
Well, he came in because of Darren, right? Because so you're bringing up a good point. And I want to make sure we also get this out before the end of the show. You know how we're going to win back the state? We've got to sue the governor. Do you know the only person that has been successful suing the governor to date, besides the NRA, is Tom DeVore. Awake Illinois, the Mama Bears movement. There have been people. We've got to take JB to task. JB is in violation of the law most of the time. He doesn't care. He will fly in the face. Sanctuary states. He flies in the face of the federal law, voting laws, polling, or I should say poll books, cleaning up voter rolls. JB doesn't care. He's not issuing a letter to the Illinois State Board of Elections to clean their voter rolls. He says, no, stack the voter rolls. I need as many votes as I can get. It's the only way we're going to truly push back. And why isn't Tony McCombie, John Curran, and the Freedom Caucus at least finally filed a lawsuit? And I can't remember what it was about. It's about the craziness of something going on. I think it was the
budget and the way it was passed, and the
yes, that's in the middle of the night. But
And
at least it's the only way we're going to make headway with the governor. We've got to get him into a courtroom. You know, they had no problem getting Trump into courtrooms.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say this, that the Republican leadership, they do also have a lawsuit. Only after the Freedom Caucus filed theirs, they had a lawsuit about a bill similar. They're going after the procedure of the way it was passed, because it was passed like in the dead of night and all of that. So the Freedom Caucus is doing their lawsuit based off the budget, and then the Republican leadership is doing theirs based off a bill.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they are now finally, but you know, that's doesn't mean anything during Tom DeVore's time, right? During the pandemic and when he sued the governor over the mask mandates. That was when he had launched a bid for office, a statewide office. You know, the Freedom Caucus and the Republican leadership, if they're launching these courtroom attacks, which is great, you also have to couple that with a statewide run.
Yeah.
And, you know, really draw attention to yourself.
So just the listeners know, because I always like to bring the facts. You know me, Kat. Tom DeVore had already circulated petitions to run for a appellate court position. He was locked and loaded. It was going to be like a 3 or 4 way primary. Okay. No. And somebody came to him, and I don't know what Darren had any impact, but they said, you know, you should really get in, because you remember Richard Irvin had stacked his slate with comptroller, Shannon Terese, that Kim guy. There was another attorney general candidate. Oh, David Shostokis. And somebody came to DeVore and said, no, you need to get in and run for attorney general. Darren's going to need air support when he gets into the governor's office. Because people really thought Darren was going to be governor, right? Even though he had a minority representation in the General Assembly, at least he would control the agencies and would be able to pump the brakes. Somebody went to DeVore. DeVore said, yep, I'm going to do it. 10 days before filing, 10 days, he got 10,000 signatures in 10 days.
Wow. Yeah.
Most candidates can't get 10,000 signatures in 3 months.
Yeah.
Tom DeVore.
There's power when you are willing to take the fight public and in the courtroom and not just do this lip service. There's power in that, and that can really launch yourself into a successful campaign. And, you know, the Freedom Caucus and the Republicans leadership is doing that, but like they're just doing that, and they're not using it to the best of their ability, you know, to win a state office. And I think that they should use it politically. They should use it.
It raises your stock, even if you don't win and you run for a higher office. Okay, so I just signed a petition yesterday for comptroller for Brian Drew. Do you know who Brian Drew is? Look that up. It was rumored he was going to run for U.S. Senate. This isn't Don Tracy. Brian Drew is an attorney that he's been on Facebook Lives with Tom DeVore. But Brian Drew is a conservative Christian man who's really big into the whole school effort and everything else like that, Christian homeschooling. But Brian Drew is a very dynamic, well thought of person down in the Southern Illinois. I think he's from Benton, Illinois. He's going to run for comptroller. And he's a guy. Now, is he going to win? Because JB's going to spend millions of dollars to make sure that his slate gets in. Susan Mendoza is vacating that seat. I bet she just couldn't take any more of not filing accurate reports, right? She couldn't get the information she wanted from the Auditor General. So Brian's going to run for comptroller. It's going to raise his stock. I don't know if he's ever held an office before, county board or school board, but it doesn't matter. He's instantly going to elevate himself. So would somebody like Chris Miller or Darren LaHood or Mary Miller. If they ran for that office, their counters on their social media platforms would go up to 100,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah. And the next go around, even if you were to lose, it helps It helps you in your next go around and eventually you win. I always tell people like 3 times, David, he ran, what was it, twice?
Again, stop twice for state rep, and then
I think 3 times a charm.
Well, I got convinced that I needed to run for city council, but I felt compelled to go to January 6th more than be on the city council. And of course, as soon as I went to January 6th, they tried to create some type of rule through the town council that anyone who attended a insurrection should not be a candidate. That Chris Coos should pull my candidacy because I'm an insurrectionist.
My God.
You know who the insurrectionist is? Barack Hussein Obama.
Yep, he's treasonous.
Yeah, it's an insurrection. He tried to overthrow a duly elected president.
Yep. I do want to talk about this before we go. I'm going to play this. This is Judge Janine.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you heard about this. This is a fun way to end our Friday, David. President Donald Trump, we know that he's delegated federal agents to D.C., and they're kind of showing themselves around D.C. That's good. Policing, they're, discouraging the bad actors just by having their presence there, right? So listen to this report. A police affidavit states that Sean Dunn, age 37, allegedly began yelling at a Customs and Border Patrol agent, along with other federal agents. There's a bunch of them there. He began yelling, and the affidavit states that he told the officer, "F you, you effing fascist. Why are you here? I don't want you in my city." Officials say Dunn continued to conduct himself, continued his conduct for several minutes. So, like, he was jumping up and down, screaming, throwing his hands in the air. He was going completely off the rails. And then finally, he hurls a foot-long sandwich at one of the federal agents. Let's take a listen here. Here we go.
The old foot-long.
So President Trump has vowed to make D.C. safe and beautiful again. And as part of his effort to fight crime, he's bringing in our federal law enforcement partners like FBI.
Look at that. Did you see? Well, he'll rerun that. I want to see his arm swing.
Our police.
How do you throw that sandwich?
I'll go back.
Go back. Watch his right arm. You knew this guy's. He's a beta boy. Let's watch this again.
Well, he's bouncing like an infant girl in the beginning here. Let's take a look.
Fight crime. He's bringing in our federal law enforcement partners like FBI, ATF, DEA, or Park Police, everybody to help the Metropolitan PD fight crime. And the president's message to the criminals was, if you spit, we hit. Well, we didn't quite do that the other night when an individual went up to one of the federal law enforcement officers and started jumping up and down, screaming at him, berating him, yelling at him. And then he took a Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony, assault on a police officer. And we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there. Stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
Well, Janine, I don't know if I want to give him that advice because he might take you up on it.
David!
He's going to get another name for footlong.
We're going to get canceled. I know it. YouTube's going to knock me off. We're making gay jokes. David, he was bouncing like a little girl, literally in front of these officers, and then he hurls this foot-long sandwich. I'm shocked. I mean, a felony assault, I don't know if I would have gone that far, but I mean, it's warranted because you have to make a statement.
Oh, no. You can't walk up to a police officer and throw anything at him. I don't care what it is. A glass of water? No. A rock, a foot-long sandwich, which I don't understand. Golly, the irony behind the foot-long sandwich. And Judge Janine saying you can put your foot-long sandwich somewhere else. That's classic.
It's wonderful.
You know what she meant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's in pink. He's wearing pink. But if you throw something at
real men don't wear pink, Kat, just so you know.
I've never seen, my dad would be caught dead wearing pink. I don't think I've ever seen you wear pink. I'm sorry.
I'll wear light blue, but that's about as aggressive as I get. Back in the day, it was popular. I might have worn a salmon color.
Yeah, I mean that's a flamboyant pink. That is like a flamingo pink.
Yeah, the Floridian. But even then, I was like, nah, this is just getting a little too sketchy for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. All the men in my life, I've never seen them wear pink once. So the reason why, I mean, at first glance, you're thinking to yourself, man, felony assault is just a damn sandwich,
Yeah.
But the reason why you have to charge somebody with a felony like that, I always say this, you can't, like, even if that officer was for a second stalled in his duties, right?
Yeah.
That could lead to the death of somebody else. So, for
Yeah.
example, a lot of people, Sonia Massey, do you know that story, David?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They've been really up in arms, and this is nothing compared to that. When I originally talked about it on my show, she threw she had a pot of boiling water, right? And I don't think the officer conducted himself in a professional manner. However, I thought it was all by the book, given that she had a deadly weapon. I mean, she was wielding what was considered a deadly weapon. A foot long, not a deadly weapon. But that would have stalled the officer. This person was mentally ill. Obviously, that would have stopped the officer at least temporarily. And, she could have grabbed the gun. She could have left the premises and gone and hurt somebody else. So charging this guy with felony, I don't think is that far of a stretch, because it's like, you can't stall an officer no matter what it is. If it was a glass of water, he had to wipe the water away from his eyes. They're there to do a job, which is to police the streets and to shut down the crime in DC. And if you stop an officer from doing that, then you're going to hurt people. So you have to charge these people with felonies.
Well, and then endangering people by taking off and running down the street. What kind of, be a man. Stand toe to toe. If you're going to throw a sandwich at him, stand there.
Yeah. Well,
and if you're going to get a beat down, take the beat down. Be a man.
Yeah.
But by now you endanger people because you have a police chase down the street.
Yep.
And you're breaking up that. They obviously had a line of defense. So you're breaking up that, allowing other perpetrators to come and try to disrupt this police barricade. I mean, felony. I hope he does, get some consequences, accountability for his actions. Why anybody thinks that is okay, I don't know. But great way to end the show.
Yeah. I was like, oh man. To address this, Sonia was murdered. Yes, she was shot. But there's been people who've done, attorneys, self-defense attorneys who have looked at this, and like, the pot of boiling water was there, and she was wielding it against him, the officer. Now the officer saying things on his body cam, clearly, I don't think that he was a nice guy. But at the end of the day, there are multiple people who've looked through frame by frame that footage and have said, yes, it was a justified shooting, in that she was wielding what would be considered a deadly weapon, a pot of boiling water, foot long, not a deadly weapon, hence the assault charge. And
obviously, one, justified or not, I believe if somebody's wielding a pot of water, you can't get close enough to try to bring them into custody. But I do believe, do you have to use deadly force? Probably not. But we've seen videos, and you don't know the extent of mental illness and where these people are at. Do they have weapons? That is another concern. We are dealing with crazy of the crazy, and it's being continued to be flamed. The fires, this isn't smoke anymore. Not that was yesterday at the Republican event. This is fire. Our streets are on fire. The people are on fire. And where does fire come from? The pit of hell. These people are possessed. They're possessed.
Yeah, and it was really unfortunate to Sonia Massey, where she was just mentally ill, and you don't want to mess around with a mentally ill person wielding a pot of boiling water. I don't know what I would have done in that situation, but cops are trained to shoot to kill. That's what it is. Deadly.
And I know we're a little overtime, Kat, but I can't leave the show today. You bring up a point. I talked to, even in our little communities, Bloomington PD, Normal. Do you know that at least 60 to 70% of the calls that they're going out on deal with mental health issues?
So sad. So
we're in a bad way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad. I do want to get to a couple more comments here before you go, David.
Right.
Pink was considered a more masculine color up to the 1940s. Then societal norms began to shift, associating pink with femininity. And instead, in the 19th century, pink was often seen as a watered-down version of red, which was deemed suitable for boys. Interesting. A little factoid there. Actually, pink was a color for men. I don't know. In modern,
I wasn't around the 1940s. I'm not buying it.
I've never seen a man in one of my circles, like my brother, my father, my husband. I've never seen them wear pink in my life.
John Wayne did not wear pink.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know who John Wayne is?
Yeah, John Wayne is. Yeah, John Wayne is the.
Clint Eastwood did not wear pink.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
back to the 1940s, people that were born. Pink was considered more masculine. Oh, you put that up again.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for our comments for today. David, thanks so much for joining me on the show. Folks, if you are watching right now, I want you to head on over to The DPP Show, type it in your search bar, and go subscribe to The DPP Show. DPP joins me on the Conservative Cat Show. Sometimes it's been on Fridays. A lot of times it's been on Fridays. He joins as a frequent flyer.
We're going to make it Fridays. We'll make it Fridays at 7 a.m., Cat. Maybe we'll expand it a little bit.
I love it.
We got a lot to talk about.
We sure do. And David, thanks for breaking down the Illinois State Fair. You folks have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you. Have a safe weekend. We'll be back at it on Monday morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m.